And it is with a heavy heart that we come to you this morning, nerds. We've all certainly know that we've lost Stan Lee this week. And this episode, I think we're going to take a little time to remember Stan Lee and some of the awesome things he did and the awesome things he meant to us. Guys, how are y'all doing?
Way to bring down the room.
Good morning. We're doing well. Good morning, nerds.
Let's face it.
Who else is ecstatic this morning now after that intro?
Wow.
All right. Well, aren't we all committing suicide after this? I thought that was the point.
No, I'm not part of the Red Oyster cult, sir.
Oh, okay.
Or the Blue Oyster.
Or the Blue Oyster cult, for that matter.
Are you part of any oyster cult?
No. But I certainly wish it would be nice to be a member of the Blue Oysters because, I mean, they did some fantastic stuff back in the day.
They did do some good songs.
And some really good stuff.
Wow, this is a weird segue.
It's an interesting beginning, nonetheless. So, I mean, yeah. How are y'all doing?
Okay, so outside of it being a crappy week since when did
it's good.
Past Monday? Right?
Yeah,
on the 12th.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I think so.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, horrible with dates. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Not just the fruits.
Okay. Spouses too.
No, I'm pretty good on those.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because hey. Anyway, yeah. So, man, this past couple of 6 weeks have just been mind numbing with crap like this. But
Yeah.
we gotta have more cowbells. What Bruce just said.
It probably does need more cowbell.
It probably does
Really
need more
does.
cowbell.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm glad somebody's
now
pumped.
it's switched.
I'm glad somebody's pumped.
Yeah. So we have it's we're gonna talk about Stan Lee today, which is good because he did a lot of stuff, and we're gonna talk about Stan Lee completely. And it's not just gonna be.
It's not just his head and shoulders. We're talking about all of Stan Lee.
Yeah, that's right.
Toes to top of the hair.
Exactly right.
The whole deal.
Shins,
Everything. Right. Yes.
That man's spleen was amazing.
Did he still have the spleen?
Yeah.
He hung on to
Yes.
it the entire time?
The entire time.
How about that?
It was crazy.
How about that?
Yeah,
Little known
15-minute
fact.
diatribe about his spleen.
Wow.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Little
God,
known
no.
fact. He had the spleen.
Yeah.
Jansen, are you sure you want to run today's show? I mean, it already sounds bad.
Dude, I'm already here, might as well.
He's like, I signed up for it. Yeah.
I've had worse times talking about
So
spleens.
today has been quite the interesting start. I wore a green shirt, so
Do you come
Now you're
off
just
like
a floating head.
so I was
Floating
a floating
head?
head for a while. That was always good.
I had to turn mine around because I also had green on me.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true. Jason mistakenly got himself a hamburger with cheese and meat on it from 7-Eleven, which,
Yeah.
good grief, dude.
Good luck to you and your anus later. So Stan Lee
Yeah, Stanley.
passed away this week, and we're not laughing at that. We're laughing at the stupidity that is Jason as we all put our heads down.
Really?
And shame. Look,
I'll take the credit for that one.
You'll take the credit for that one?
That was my
That's fine.
fault. That was my fault. It's okay. The table broke the fall.
yeah, the table broke the fall. Looked at the trap, Ray. Anyway, yeah, I know this was supposed to be a really delicate show. To hell with that now.
We don't do delicate.
We really don't. We just don't.
We don't do delicate.
But let's talk about this man's life
Okay.
and celebrate what he meant for all of us.
Of course.
There's some really interesting things that that I've been reading about that he's done.
So
That
do we want to start at the beginning?
I think we just start at the beginning,
Yeah.
right?
So born when? Jason goes, I have no freaking clue.
Start from
He was
the
actually
beginning.
born December 22nd he was born December of 1922. He grew up during the Depression. He and his younger brother Larry,
And his other brother, Larry? Their family was poor, and he grew
Like
up-
most people in
like
the
most
Depression.
people during the
Yeah.
Depression.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So what you're saying is, he was average.
Yeah.
He had an average family.
And but more specifically, his name was Stanley Lieber.
Yes.
I'm just going to work from the assumption that not everyone knows
Stanley Martin.
Right.
Stanley Martin.
Right.
And
Right.
so he grew up wanting to write the great American novel. Right. He was really
Is that the title of what he wanted to write, or are you just saying in
Just
general
in
he
general.
wanted to write the great American
He's
novel?
talked about it in length and interviews and everything else.
Yeah.
That's what he set his life out to do. Was he just wanted to write
the
this
great
novel
American
Yeah.
that
novel.
blew everyone away.
right. And he grew up. His brother and he had the one bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
His mother and father slept on the couch. It was a fold-out couch in the living room. That's how small their apartment was.
Good grief, man.
When he actually
The back
graduated,
problems in that family.
I can't imagine. But
It's a real issue.
it really is, dude. Those older.
Think about
fold-out
how
couches,
old. I mean,
You are no longer allowed to drink this early in the morning.
I actually didn't
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so he
Forgot about that mouthwash.
graduates high school early, and he goes and
Graduates high school early or what, Jason?
Did you ever see that movie, The Toy Soldiers, where he was selling the mouthwash?
Saw that. Yes.
Okay. So he grew up.
He grew up.
anyway.
It's only going to be a way that we can do this.
Dude, I've been out for over a month.
I
I've got to
know.
come back and just like
Oh, by the way,
swing for the
welcome back.
fences. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be here last show. So
Things happen.
things happen.
So, high school.
High school.
High
He grows
school.
up.
Yeah, he grows up. See now,
Sharing a bed with his
now
brother.
all I have is that scene from The Jerk by Steve Martin. I grew up a poor black child.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
so he grew. So okay, he grew up.
Comments
graduates
go
high-
to Jason McLean
Yeah.
at vagabondnerds.com.
I'm just done with the whole episode. F this. Anyway, again from the top. He grew up. His cousin was married. His cousin was married to one of the people who actually ran Timely Comics.
Oh,
at the
right.
time.
Okay.
And Timely
so,
Comics eventually became.
Marvel Comics.
So
Now,
this is his introduction into
into
the comic business.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
And it was Archie Goodwin who was running it at the time. Now, let me
Good guy.
take a step back. This could be half a show on its own. From moving forward, we're
From
just
whose
gonna-
point of view?
Hold on. The thing that you have to understand about Timely Comics and how it evolves into Marvel Comics is that Timely was one of several comic book companies all owned by the same person.
Conglomerate. Fair enough.
It was not necessarily a conglomerate. It was a family-owned thing, but what his thought was, you have multiple comic books from multiple imprints.
So mafia.
Sure, why not?
Gotcha.
So anyway, he starts there. Joe Simon's already
Family.
there.
Family.
A monopoly built on the comic book industry?
Yeah.
What would Diamond say about this?
How
I
would
don't
that
know.
ever happen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Anyway, so by the time he gets there, Joe Simon, Jack Kirby, some of these guys are already there working.
They're working at Timely Comics.
Timely Comics.
Gotcha.
right. So
Okay.
it's
And
Timely
they're doing
Comics
illustrating and story writing.
Exactly.
Someone's doing right. Yeah.
Okay. So,
And
yeah.
he is filling the inkwells and getting sandwiches and doing all the things an 18-year-old kid
Did those
does.
sandwiches have meat and cheese on them, or do
You
you
know
think
what?
it was
No,
just?
we're not going there.
We're not?
No.
Fair enough.
All right, so keep going, Jason.
So he's filling
basically,
inkwells.
Anyway,
he's,
so
he's
a
an
gopher.
intern.
He's an intern.
Yeah, he's the intern.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's
gotcha.
a gopher. He's doing with it, and then eventually, Joe Simon and Kirby leave because they're upset with Archie,
Okay.
and so Archie goes and puts him.
What's Jughead doing here this entire time?
Thank you for asking. I was
I
about
knew you were waiting for it. I just wanted to get in front of you. Go ahead.
Jughead actually worked for DC at the time,
That explains it.
which was Whitman Comics in the
Now I
South.
know why the
But
movies
that's a
are
whole
so
different
bad.
thing. Yeah, exactly. So
It started with Jughead. Well, problem solved. Are you listening, Mar? Are you listening, DC?
I can pretty much guarantee that no one else is in memorial or in memoriam or whatever kind of show. I don't care at
Look,
this point.
the deal
is
is-
going like this.
The deal is, and this is how it always should be, and I think it kind of usually does end up this way. Any memoriam or any memorial that's worth a damn
should be fun.
ends up with people sharing good times and stories and being
Yeah.
funny with one another, because that's how everybody wants other people to be around
And
each
I
other.
think,
That's how my father's was.
yeah,
You know, that's how it
how
is.
mine was.
You,
That's how
you,
your
you
father
hang out,
was.
you tell jokes, you remember the good times, and you laugh about it. And I think Stanley would enjoy this conversation.
I think this
if
is
he was part of
absolutely.
it.
Oh, he would have. Yeah.
Seen the interviews that he has done, seen him speak a couple times. Yeah.
no, he would have absolutely
Yeah,
laughed. at
I
this.
think this would be.
He would
something
have
he
a fun
like.
time.
I don't know that
So-
he would have appreciated the Jughead joke, but whatever.
Screw that. Anyway,
the
so
meat and cheese
so
comment.
so the bottom line is Timely Comic now needs a writer.
Right, and an editor, and essentially he gets put in charge of it at 19.
Wow, dude.
So he is-
19, and he's got those two, what I would consider lofty positions.
Yeah, he is editor. He's writing.
Well, the irony to that is at that time, not so much.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, it
I know.
was a
At the
very-
time,
it was-
comics was a lowly form. That was a lowly art
yeah.
form.
Which
I mean,
he does talk about as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so yeah.
And that's the thing. Comics were not. I mean, they had just been created. Well, okay, they've been around
parents-
for a little bit, but by and large, this was a new medium. It was entertainment for kids.
Right.
Nobody cared about.
No,
it.
it was looked down upon by a lot of parents. They were like, "I don't want my kids reading this trash or this filth." I mean, that was how it was referred to a lot of the time.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, one of his first stories that he penned actually introduced the concept of Captain America throwing his shield.
introduced the concept of it.
Yes.
Are we getting ahead of ourselves?
No.
Okay.
Because see, Captain America had already been created at this point in time.
By
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because
okay.
again,
Simon, right?
Yeah, by Simon and Kirby.
Okay.
They had created him, but he hadn't thrown a shield until Lee, 19 years old, steps in and pins this one story.
And says, "Let's throw the shield."
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And so he's pinning some backup stories. But he's mostly doing editing, proofreading, stuff like that. And of course, the U.S. enters World War II, and he immediately is thrust into the great field of fixing and repairing communications equipment and telephone poles. Which, again, because we're so used to cellular technology and satellites and radio, telephone and telegraph was still the main way we communicated. So his job was actually really important.
Yeah.
However, at some point, he was acknowledged. And in fact, let me take a step back. Probably what actually got him... Hold on, this is sort of an important point.
You hear that snoring? That's not Bach. That's actually Jansen right now.
I just thought that was the live feed from our listeners.
Do we have a live audience? Is that what's going on right now?
Yeah. No, prior to working for Timely, he had actually worked for the government in one of the WPEs or WPAs.
I thought you said they didn't have that kind of technology back then.
Your story is crazy. I think.
Hold on. He had already worked for them. Okay, so they had jobs, right? Where
There we
kids
go.
would go out and during the Depression, and you'd lay bricks or whatever. Well, he actually worked for the arts department in it. That's essentially how he was recognized while he's over there fixing communications. People, hey, we need to put you into the art department in the military, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
The communications department, all that. Anyway, long story short, he ends up becoming one of 9 servicemen whose actual rank, I hate you so much, was playwright. Literally, 9 people in the military had the designation of playwright.
And he was one of them.
Now, here's the thing. I had heard this story for years and never thought to actually look it up because...
Jesus, and you're going to do it now while we're on the show?
No, he's already done it.
He's
He's at the point where he's about to talk about it. If you just shut up, he'll get there and we can get this over with.
This is entirely true.
What did he say? Delay? Oh, I've missed you, Sean, so much.
Jason, I'm pulling for you, bud. Come on. I know you can get there. There's an end to this train.
There really is.
There is.
It's
Anyway,
Amtrak.
okay, so sometimes Stanley's memory
sweet.
could be faulty from time to time, and he could take credit for crap that didn't actually occur.
Cool, yeah.
So I never thought to actually double check this story until this morning. Of this team of 9 people, only 9 has the military ever designated as playwright.
Okay.
That was their official standing in the military.
All right.
Of the 9 people, some of these names you may recognize. He, outside of Stanley, was...
So he got that right. He actually did remember that he
actually
was.
did.
Okay,
Well,
so what
yeah.
else we got? Come on, let's go.
Probably the 2 best names that would be immediately recognized by most people is Frank Capra and Theodore Geisel. And
Geisel, I know.
And for Theodore Geisel, if you don't know who that is actually Dr. Seuss. That is his legal name. And Frank Capra, of course, being the guy who directed It's a Wonderful Life, amongst many other classic films.
Who we don't really care about because we're talking about Stanley today.
Right, but the point is...
interesting factoid.
Yeah, that's how he served the rest of World War II.
It's a nugget of knowledge, if you will.
Yes. Anyway, so he's...
Oh, it's a nugget, all right.
So he's working for Timely. He's just got promoted out of being basically a gopher, and now all of a sudden he's the editor and an artist.
Right, and then he's in the military for the rest of World War II.
Most of a lot of people were drafted, pulled into. Right. So when he was in there, he started. You and I talked about this. He started doing as a playwright. He was writing, illustrating pamphlets, illustrating different materials for them, and their
and translating written material into. Films and doing promotion. So he was doing whatever the military needed is what he was doing. And as a lot of people did.
Yep.
Right. Particularly even the guys who would later go into comics, they were with the military, doing these things that need to be done. There just has to be somebody to do it, and he was one of them. So World War II ends. He comes back to Timely, which is now Atlas Comics.
Okay.
And he gets to busting his ass. He is literally the art director, editor, the writer and the proofreader for every comic that comes out of Atlas Comics.
All right, question. Did he come back and just appoint himself all these titles? Or did he come back and he was given this because...
They gave it to him.
Why was he the... Okay, so they didn't have anybody else.
And
How
so
did that happen? Oh,
again,
wait. The war.
The war.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So he's sitting there and they're publishing...
Yeah. Sorry. There we go. All right.
Yeah. So they're publishing westerns, mystery,
Yep.
horror,
Yep.
love, romance stories, things like that, science fiction stories, because superheroes weren't a thing.
And these are all still comic books.
These are all still comic books.
Okay.
And so
they do in newspapers too? Is it?
He does.
He does, but not at
this point.
Well, he actually does. There's one comic strip that he co-works. It was a based off of a radio play that was very popular at the time, and so he and I forget who else, the artist, he was writing that as well for this artist, and they would translate them into these comic strips, which would go into the newspapers.
Okay.
So he's doing all of this during the 50s, and he's getting burnt out because again, nobody cares about comics. This is like the reason like a Donald Duck comic from pre-World War II can sell for $20,000 or $30,000 is because they simply don't exist. These are literal artifacts now. That it's not
because
like
they were doing recycle drives,
right? And plus, nobody kept comics.
Yeah.
Everybody threw them away, and they were recycled.
Which is where action got lost.
Yeah.
Detective. That's why we've got a lot of copies of Amazing Fantasy 15. Maybe not in the best shape, but there's a lot that are out there that exist. Whereas in anything prior to the war, not so much.
All gone.
Yeah.
So he's getting burnt out, and not only is he not getting the recognition, he still wants to write, the great American novel, and he feels like he's being held back. And so, coincidentally, Archie's is out there playing golf with
Jughead.
With Jughead. You know what? We'll keep it that way because
all right. So Archie and Jughead are playing golf.
It's Julius Schwartz, but it's actually we'll call him Jughead.
Okay.
Who runs DC, and they're talking about how the great success they've had with by bringing back their superhero teams, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman have consistently survived World War II. Right. Most of them had gone off, but they revived them, and they created the Justice League. And he's like, hey, we're having some great success because we've brought back a more modern Flash and Green Lantern. They reinvented them as sci-fi characters, and they're doing well. So after this round, Archie goes back to Stan Lee and says, who, by the way, the reason he pins his name as Stan Lee was because he was comics were so looked down on. He didn't want people knowing that it was actually him.
Right. So he was saving his real name for the Great American Novel, and he used his Stan Lee, his pen name, to write in the comic world.
Exactly.
Because as he once said to the Washington Post, I used to be embarrassed because I was just a comic book writer while other people were building bridges or going on to medical careers. And then I began to realize entertainment is one of the most important things in people's lives. Without it, they might go off the deep end. I feel that if you're able to entertain people, you're doing a good thing.
But it took him a while to get there. It took him a while to get there. So again, he's still working under the pen name of Stan Lee at this point. And Archie comes to him and says, hey, Jughead just told me about these comics they're doing, the superheroes.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. So Jughead's,
and he's like, make me some superheroes.
Yes.
So he goes to Jack Kirby, who's back with Atlas now at this point, and just
because everybody needs a job.
Because everybody needs a job. It's post World War II, and the thing is, most of the artists who were doing comics at the time were also doing those the drawings for the newspaper ads. Like for those of us who are a little bit older, you remember the actual the Sears and Roebuck, the actual illustrators because they did better in black and white.
That's right.
That's what they were doing, but they liked the comics because it paid regularly.
Of course. You need that steady job.
Exactly, but how many you could pin out. And
so this is all right. So at this point, this is where he goes to Kirby with his first idea of the Fantastic Four, right?
Which is based off of the Challengers of the Unknown, which Kirby created for DC.
But back in the day. So it's Stan's idea based on another idea because everybody robs from everybody, and that's just how it goes.
Well, kind of. But what Stan Lee was always brilliant at doing
is people
and family.
That's it. It's always people,
and it wasn't about what was going around him. It was about what was going. at the time.
The stuff that was happening around them
was ancillary.
Was ancillary to drive the plot of the family.
Yeah, versus just, you get the DC comics where it's Superman, the powered super alien who can do anything and everything, battling a foe and overcoming the end. And that's it. I mean, you have those minor, it's almost a one-dimensional character when you think about the fact that he just kind of has to just show up, put on a pair of glasses, and all of a sudden nobody recognizes him anymore. It's hard to believe.
Exactly.
But Stan Lee always prized himself on making a character a believable character. I mean, I think he said several times, even if you're going to create something fantastic, it has to be believable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that suspension of disbelief.
And he was great at creating the everyman.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like so and let me rephrase that.
Fallible superheroes.
He was
I love that.
Very much so.
Love that.
And a lot of people want to sit there and say, well, Stan Lee's created over blah blah blah. However many, I think it's 100+ characters that he created just with Marvel.
Right. Because he had WoW. Was it WoW? No.
POW.
POW comics.
POW Entertainment.
And Stanley. But we'll forget all that.
Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah. I think towards the end, even Stan Lee forgot about it with all the lawsuits that came out.
There you go.
But he definitely did the everyman. And more importantly, though, the one thing that I do want to state, and he actually later came to say, creation, it wasn't that he was creating these characters, he was co-creating these characters. We got to a point where we had to realize that the artists that were working with Stan Lee, Kirby, Ditko, these were just as important people. Quesada. Whoever it was, right? They were just as important to come in and have that creation for them. But to do what he was doing at the time, and let's fast forward now, right? We'll fast forward to Amazing Fantasy 15.
Well, there's one interesting thing I want to bring into because again, the condition Kirby's in, and again, by the time we get to Fantastic Four, it does become Marvel Comics, literally the same year.
Okay, so Fantastic Four ushers in
the
Marvel
literally
comics.
the Marvel age.
Gotcha.
And the thing is,
which is why it's the first family.
Exactly. But more importantly, his wife Joan, he had married in 1949, I believe. He was, like I said, he was burnt out, right? And so she told him, well, since you're ready to leave anyway, why don't you go ahead and do whatever story you want to do it as? That's why he created Fantastic Four the way he did as the family.
That's right. I remember him. There was an interview where he mentioned his wife was kind of the reason the whole thing happened. Was
For Amazing Fantasy 15.
She said, just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was getting ready to leave Marvel, so that's what saves him with Marvel.
He was
Fantastic
timely.
Four.
He's getting ready to leave. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but he's getting ready to leave. Amazing Fantasy, they've said, hey, issue 15, that's the last one. We're getting ready to shut this comic book down. It's not selling for crap.
And so he had, again, you're sort of jumping a little bit ahead of the story, but the point is, because he had this character named Spider-Man that he wanted to use, and Archie kept shooting him down. Archie's the publisher. And so Amazing Fantasy 15, like he says, comes around, and it's the last issue. They know it's going to be the last issue, and she says, well, why don't you just go ahead and do that story that you've been wanting to do? Anyway, because again, now he's now rededicated himself to Marvel Comics because of the success that he's been having with the Fantastic Four and these other superheroes that he's created, Iron Man, Thor. And they're like, well, here, just do this last one because Archie hates him. Now, here's the thing.
Do this because Archie hates it.
Exactly.
Well, actually, it's pretty much...
Yeah, not necessarily out of spite, just saying, hey...
You got nothing to lose.
You got nothing, he's not going to care anyway.
Just do it.
So, he creates them. And here's the thing. It takes 6 months for the numbers to come back on that because it's back in the day. 6 months later, Archie comes back and says, hey, you remember that great character Spider-Man we all loved?
How about we do a series on that?
How about we bring him back? And so here's the deal, right? I mean, we can go on about how he creates all these other characters, but like you were talking about the co-creation, this is something we need to address right now. The way...
It's going to be addressed right now. Right now. Go ahead. Don't mess with the computers because you don't know how to do it.
Easy there, John Connor.
Slow down.
So
anyway, like he said.
And I'll be damned if you didn't screw this up. Go ahead.
Don't make me touch it again. So the way they worked is Stan Lee would actually sit down with Jack Kirby or Ditko, Bill Everetts, whoever, and they would actually discuss what they wanted the issue to be. It wasn't just that he dreamt it up. He co-plotted it with them. He would then bring them a plot. You know, it's not fully scripted.
No, not at all. He'd say, here's the beginning, here's where I want it to end, here's a rough thing I might like to happen in the middle.
An outline.
Play it out. And then they would just basically write it and pen it themselves.
Well, the artist would then, they would pen it. Yeah.
He would come in and throw in the dialogue and the bits afterwards.
the artist.
Right. After the artist had had their say.
Exactly. Yeah. So every issue was, and every character that was created was very much.
It's a co-creation.
It was a co-creation. It was a team effort. And the thing is, up to that point, most people who never, the inkers and the letterers never got credit.
Right.
Stan Lee introduced that concept of on the splash page having not just
the three names like across the top underneath the title, like us seeing that kind of thing, or the little blurb in the box where it says ink, outlining, that kind of stuff.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so he because he wants everyone to get their due. Yeah. Because he does see it as a team effort.
Well, and you know, starting from the beginning, like where he was, he's going to recognize that. He started from the bottom. He had a good shot, and he got up to where he's at. He's still going to give the thanks for, you know.
Kind of. The 70s got rougher, but go ahead.
Yeah. So
we'll get there.
We're still in the 60s, dude.
Everybody goes through phases. Everyone goes through
Jason's
phases.
going really slow through this.
If someone would shut the fuck up.
You mean you? Go.
I think that counts as an F-bomb.
It does.
It does count as an F-bomb.
Count it. You know what?
Yeah.
No, don't go back and do it.
You're not very good.
Oh my God! Don't slow him down. Let him go.
Censoring himself. You know, you're supposed to just say and stop or something. Not slightly get to the K on a whisper.
This is why we can't have nice things. It's this shit right here.
Would you get to the point?
If you let me.
You've been talking nonstop since the show started. Go.
All right, ladies. Come on.
You're both pretty. So
you're both pretty.
So not only are these
I missed this.
Yeah.
Not only are these comics actually selling really, really well, they start getting letters.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
We're on the letters. I know we're talking about the letters. Okay, but this is the first time they'd actually been getting letters back from anything they've done.
Right.
Real honest fan mail.
Fan mail.
Fail mail.
Fail mail. Yeah, fail mail. Well, up to that point, he even mentions, like, my comic only had 2 staples in it. I'd like a refund. Like, that was one of the letters that they were getting. And so they finally started getting fan mail. And so he starts responding in a very colloquial way on a letters page.
Yep.
Then he creates Stan's Soapbox. And people weren't just saying, Dear Editor.
Yeah.
It was Dear Stan and Jack.
Right.
And so he starts creating this personality for Marvel Comics as a whole. And he becomes very much the public face of Marvel Comics. And it becomes very interactive through these letter pages and these Stan soapboxes.
And very much creates the rivalry.
The rivalry,
between
this is why Ditko and Kirby.
Because everybody now sees him as promoting himself in front of everyone.
Well, it's not so much that as well. It's that he's kind of taken over.
Gotcha.
More in a way that they weren't really prepared for.
Gotcha.
And it's not something they were used to seeing because up until then they'd all still been doing things
together
and as a collaborative.
And nobody was out in front of the other one.
And now all of a sudden it's Stan Lee's soapbox.
Right. And he's again his public face makes again that was the whole point behind Ditko is that I'm not getting the credit I'm due.
Right.
For what I'm doing.
Which lasted all of 100 issues of Spider-Man and then Ditko bounces.
Yeah, Ditko bounces at the height of Spider-Man. Right?
Yeah.
And he leaves Marvel Comics and he goes off to DC and do independent stuff for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, like Ditko was the worst, but Kirby even left over this.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, it caused, this is not a pretty time.
No.
Between when you get in the late 60s, early 70s with Stan.
And Ditko so much so that when Marvel finally was paying Stan Lee the royalties for Spider-Man, they offered the same program to Ditko.
I remember this, but he didn't.
And Ditko turned it down.
He turned it down.
Yeah. He said, I want no part of it.
Yeah, he turned it down.
And we're talking millions upon millions that he turned down.
And like I said, that's a whole thing altogether. There's a lot more. It wasn't just that he and
no, of course not. But something with that much animosity that stays with you has got to be deeper than just you were writing something extra in a panel and I wasn't given my due for that.
Exactly. He kept all of the original artwork for all the work he did on Spider-Man, and people would talk about going into his office and seeing him using them as backing boards for crap he was cutting out.
Yeah.
Now he kept all the panels for all the pages for Amazing Fantasy 15 or 14. That's actually in the National Library of Congress. But like he was using his original artwork with Marvel to when he's over there cutting things off and to create his comics, he was using them as backing boards. I mean, literally tearing them apart. He and Kirby were not friends after this. And again, that's kind of the story for a lot of things.
Kirby?
Right? Well, not just... Well, him and, again, Ditko and Kirby both were...
Not friends with Stanley.
Not friends with Stanley after this.
But no, it's not to say that Kirby didn't come back and Stanley and him ended up having a mutual relationship. Ditko just wanted out, period. And, hey, that's just life, right? Like, I mean...
That's the type of person he is.
But
I think Stanley, I think at the end of the day, was the... he was the showman. He was... Barnum. He was P.T. Barnum. He was comics' P.T. Barnum.
Right, of course.
And he knew how to self-promote. And I think one of the greatest things that one of the best comments that I've read over this past week was Stan Lee was best at promoting Stan Lee.
Yeah.
He knew how to make sure that the brand for Marvel and the Stan Lee brand was out there. You know, and that's what he was excelled at. And,
you know, every business needs that.
It's
in a way,
right.
Every business needs that. Otherwise, it's not going to get ahead. If
we fast forward to something like the 90s where Marvel realizes that too, and it's just, hey, you are our public face.
Yeah, I remember that.
This is when we talk about Marvel, it's
Stan Lee.
Yeah. You know, it's going to be this.
Yeah.
And that's when that rift starts really kind of growing during that page. But I don't really blame him for that. He was ahead of his time when it came to that self-promotion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how we see pop culture very much is evident with how Stan Lee helped create that momentum, especially for the comic book industry. Because up until then, who really cared? Who really paid attention or listened? You know? And you go back to the characters that he created at the time that he created them at. X-Men, Black Panther, Iron Man, you know, where he's co-creating this with either
Hulk,
Kirby or
Thor.
Ditka. And it was always they always meant something.
And the stories he was doing at the time were timely to the events happening in the world. A lot of it was there was a lot of controversy. A lot of controversy in all the Marvel comics because people would read it. It's something people are paying attention to at that time. It's going to get attention in the comics as well. It's going to garner more interest and sell more comic books. And not a lot of people were doing that.
Yeah.
Well, and X-Men, very much being, a look at how racism was dividing everyone and how it was.
Yes.
One of the, him and Kirby
Love
created.
The X-Men growing up. Still do.
Yeah, him and Kirby
great.
created Black Panther,
Yeah.
which was he's like saying, hey, look, anybody can be a hero. Anybody can be a hero.
Right.
And shortly after the assassination of Martin Luther King, which I know most people have seen this now.
Yeah.
Stan's soapbox, he put this thing out there and he was like, look, and I'm
That's
gonna,
right.
I'm going to read it verbatim real quick. And it's, all right, so here it goes. Let's lay it right on the line.
This is Stanley's soapbox. Reading from him.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's lay it right on the line. Bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. But unlike a team of costumed supervillains that can't be halted with a punch in the snoot or a zap from a ray gun, the only way to destroy them is to expose them, to reveal them for the insidious evils they really are. The bigot is an unreasoning hater, one who hates blindly, fanatically, indiscriminately. If his hang-up is black men, he hates all black men. If a redhead once offended him, he hates all redheads. If some foreigner beat him to a job, he's down on all foreigners. He hates people he's never seen, people he's never known, with equal intensity, with equal venom. Now, we're not trying to say it's unreasonable for one human being to bug another. But although anyone has the right to dislike another individual, it's totally irrational, patently insane to condemn an entire race, to despise an entire nation, to vilify an entire religion. Sooner or later, we must learn to judge each other on our own merits. Sooner or later, if a man is ever to be worthy of his destiny, we must fill our hearts with tolerance. For then, and only then, will we be truly worthy of the concept that man was created in the image of God, a God who calls us all his children. That's from a comic book post.
Yeah.
And that had more insight than what was going on than what a lot of people were willing to admit. And it's still relevant today.
Yeah.
It's sad how relevant that comment is today. We should be
I don't think it's
we should be more past where we were.
Yeah. You're right.
Half a century ago.
You're right. You would hope you were past this at this point.
And yet this is something that could have been written 10 minutes ago.
In fact, speaking of, one of the things I learned doing this was that he was a poet. Like, he loved poetry. Again, going back to the whole idea of him being down on, originally on being a comics guy. His wife once in an interview said that he's more talented than anyone ever knows. And of course, they were married for 69 years before she passed 2 years ago. And one thing, and was a year, 1 year?
Just 1 year ago.
Just one.
Yeah, 2017. You're right. It was a year ago. And she talked about poetry, and I referenced. I'm like, did he ever publish any poetry? And the thing is, he didn't really publish it. But there's one poem that did get out, and it was titled "Respect." He said, "When God made man, He went all out. As far as we can tell, He made some black, He made some white, and other shades as well. He placed them on the verdant earth to live and to live and love and thrive. He favored none, He loved each one, and kept that love alive. Now the Lord's perplexed and growing vexed at those who'd mar His plan. Instead of love, some practice hate, a practice we must ban. We all must share this tiny sphere on which we live and die. Respect for all in every way should be our battle cry. It's not too late to initiate friendship between the races. So let's heed the call of the Lord of all with the love that He embraces."
Not bad.
Yeah, he was, and I think everyone is, everyone has their story of meeting Stan, or everyone has a story of, what he was. But even to his later days, when he shouldn't have been hitting convention circuits, it never stopped him from putting on a smile or anything else. In the conventions that I was ever at, where he would come up. So every convention, and I think most people that watch our show know this, whenever one of the guests comes out to do a signing, a big uproar usually goes. I've been at conventions where athletes come out and there's a big uproar or whatever. Every convention with Stan Lee, no screaming applause loud came ever until Stan Lee, and that was always the loudest one of any part of that show.
Right.
Everyone was always happy to see him, and it was always thrilling to just hear. You didn't even have to see it, just to feel the energy in the crowd. As
To be a piece of it. Yeah,
it was it was amazing, and it was because look, whatever happens in someone's private life is their private business. But for him to do whatever he's doing, unless it's made public,
and then when you know about it. But I think what you mean by saying that is, it's not our place to judge somebody.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. And so for me, and we'll do this as quickly as we can. Yeah, we could go over every character like everyone's doing about, he created this character, this character, this character. You know what? Go online and look that up, because it's going to take too long. That's
it's going to take a real long time.
That's how much content this man created.
Yeah.
But for me, it was always the feeling of Stan Lee and how he was doing and everything else, and how when I was reading his books, and I'll go with mine. The first time I read even a comic book, I was at my grandma's house, and my uncles had their comic book stash, nothing but Marvel, and Stan Lee was Fantastic Four issue was one of the first ones I read with Silver Surfer and Galactus, and I remember reading that, and it was just, I was like, oh my God, what is this? And this is I'm like 7, so I'm like I got to do more of this, and ever since then, like that was my first intro into comics, was a Marvel comic written by Stan Lee, and it just captivated me. And I've gone on to do other stuff, like other things, and I'm more of a DC fan than Marvel, but Stan Lee and what he meant to me is just, what he said, you're going to have crap in your life. Those his characters. You're going to have crap in your life, and you can choose one or two things. You can choose to let it get you down, or you can choose to overcome that. And I think that was what I always picked and drew from Stan Lee.
Well, it's the superhero message.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it always is. That's what these characters stand for. That's what you look up to them for, especially as a young kid. If you're being bullied or pushed around by a bunch of, jackasses at school, you're looking for something to lift you up. That's part of the reason I got into the whole thing.
You were that jackass, weren't you, Jason?
What, the bully?
Yeah.
I was the one getting the crap knocked out of him.
See?
We don't believe that. Okay.
Well, I mean, just because he's big, tall in stature, does not necessarily mean he can fight for himself. I mean, look at Sasquatch. He has to run from everything.
I am looking at the Sasquatch. Sorry, we were getting too deep and
up the monotony. That was. I mean, you make a very good point. Stan Lee meant.
Yeah.
Without Stan Lee, none of this. It sounds weird for me to say it, because I'm saying it and I almost don't feel right saying it. But without Stan Lee, I don't think a lot of this would have happened. I don't think Marvel ever would have been what Marvel was.
No, absolutely.
And we would have never had
right.
we would have never had most of the characters that we do have that we love and adore today. And I mean, especially the last decade of Marvel films, a decade or more of Marvel films just being out there and supplying our film industry with. And
I'm glad you say that. This generation of kids growing up, they know Stan Lee as a cameo, and I really hope that the parents that are of these kids or the kids themselves, if they're listening, don't just stay focused on that. Go and look at what this gentleman did, and don't not just him. Look at his peers.
Look at the
Kirby,
artists. Yes, look at the writers. Reach out and find the other stuff that they've done, because there's comics outside of Marvel that are fantastic, that are amazing. Marvel got me into comics, and then I found myself going through Image and dabbling in DC a little bit and getting into Valiant and all these other things. But I kind of had to. I've always been the one who's like, I don't want to do the Marvel thing because that's mainstream. That's not cool, man. So I always went and tried to find the outside underground comics. I mean, that's why I ended up going those other directions.
Kind of funny because Marvel starts off basically as this very small underground comic, and it's his work that turns into this worldwide phenomenon. But I think going back to something you said about the superhero message of one person, becoming a hero and overcoming their adversities. That's very much a Stan Lee approach, and really that wasn't even what comics were about. The DC superheroes were gods, right? Little G. They were perfect in every way.
Superman, Wonder Woman, well, except for Batman. Batman seems to be the one big anomaly out of everything.
But even then, he was the pinnacle of human perfection, and really he wasn't seen as having problems.
He was a rich. He had no restrictions. There was nothing placed upon him that he couldn't overcome with money.
Exactly.
Whereas in Spider-Man, gotta help him pay rent this week.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And again, all of these heroes had a very acknowledgeable foil. Or problem, and that is very much Stan. That is Stan Lee's contribution, I think, to the comics as a whole.
That's what drew me to Marvel over DC.
Creating these
the people. It's the people.
It wasn't just the heroes, but the villains were complex.
Yes,
that still comes through today. Some of the best. I'm still going back to the movies because to me that's what's prevalent right now. But you see that in the Marvel movies. I mean, one of my favorites, Civil War. Where they had. Zemo.
Mm-hmm.
He's angry and he's trying to tear apart the Avengers just because his wife and his son died. His family died in
Sokovia.
And I loved his character because you didn't know what the motivation was until the very end. But he's such when he says all those things, you go, oh man, you feel so bad for him, but at the same time you're like, but dude, you did the wrong thing.
Right.
And
same thing with Killmonger.
Same thing with Killmonger.
It's like you understand that.
Yes.
And Magneto. The thing is, Magneto's right about everything that he says.
Yeah. He always is.
He always is.
But Charles and him, they go down their own separate paths to try to get there.
Because and it's very important that even though Magneto is right in his conclusion, the point is it's his methods that are wrong. And that's the point. You're supposed to go for hope.
It's Thanos. Yeah. It's the same thing. Yeah. Thanos he makes points. He makes solid points. This universe will not sustain itself if we continue to feed upon it.
And that was Stan Lee's whole thing. Is that the difference between the heroes and the villains were whether or not they broke for hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Stan Lee once even said, he goes, and I'm quoting him here, everybody has Dr. Doom misunderstood. Everybody thinks he's a criminal, but all he wants is to rule the world. Now, if you really think about it objectively, you could walk up to a policeman and you could say, excuse me, officer, I want to tell you something. I want to rule the world. He can't arrest you. It's not a crime to want to do that. So it's unfair that he's considered a villain because he just wants to rule the world.
He just wants to rule the world.
Then maybe he could do a better job of it.
Hey, everybody.
You know what? So I'm very interested in Dr.
Doom,
the world. And I'd like to clear his name. It's a Stan Lee moment, man.
I'd like to clear his name. That's good.
But it's a view into how he always felt about his villains. His villains were villains because their methods were wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the idea that they had was bad.
And
it doesn't mean they were trying to.
And that's what we've said time and time again. He wrote people. He wrote stories about people. His stories were not just about this superpower on this individual that overcomes everything and anything.
Yeah.
When I heard I read an interview of him in Wizard, back when that was still being published. on a weekly, monthly, or a monthly basis.
Yeah.
I loved Wizard. That was where they first were talking about doing an X-Men movie, and they were doing that random, who would you cast? And I remember they cast Danzig as Wolverine, and I was like, he actually friggin' kind of looks like Wolverine.
Yeah,
that would not be bad.
But I will say, they were also the very first one to say, you know who'd make a great Professor X?
Yes, yeah, they were.
Patrick Stewart.
But dude, everybody, like even all the nerds were talking.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, he should
Says
totally
Patrick
be
Stewart.
like. Everybody knew that. But reading, reading that story, it was the first time I think I had read his phrase of fallible superheroes.
Yeah.
And I read that and I said, and it dawned on me at that moment why I liked them so much. I was like, you're right. This is why I enjoy this much more than any of the other comics, is because they all have problems and issues they're trying to overcome. I mean, you think about Rogue and her powers, they're amazing. She can absorb everything and anything and basically take the life force out of somebody. If she wanted to, take her gloves off, run around, just kill people. I mean, you just destroy everything.
Yeah.
But you have no more, you can no longer touch anybody. That you lose all of that sense. Like that's a serious, like if,
the intimacy in your life is gone.
Exactly. It's totally gone. So that's a huge deal. And I love the fact that most of his superheroes all had, it's a give and a take. Yep. And he did such a good job of balancing all these people and then telling all these great stories with individuals.
The Incredible Hulk had to be Bruce Banner had to be the most patient man in the world, or else he was going to go on a killing spree.
He won't like me when I'm angry.
Exactly.
Lou Ferrigno's going to show up and pound you into dust.
Right. Thanks, Tanner. And or you have Daredevil, right?
No one's going to understand that story but
I know.
me and you.
You have Daredevil who loses his sight. He loses his father, and yet he's still the hero.
He is.
I mean, that's the whole thing. These really the story of the Marvel heroes are the stories of villains who didn't become villains.
Yeah,
the X-Men.
That's true. They chose the path.
Yeah,
and like you said, of hope. They stuck with it.
And one story I found really interesting. I did not know this. Stan Sakai, creator of Usagi Yojimbo.
Oh God!
Yeah, I read this story. Go ahead.
Okay. I found it really interesting because I follow him on Facebook and he posted about it. He did the lettering for the Amazing Spider-Man daily strip that ran in newspapers for over 20 years.
Wow!
I did not know this.
I didn't know that.
Because I know Larry. I think Stan's brother did the artwork for it, but Stan Sakai did the lettering.
Who also co-created Thor with Lee, I believe. His brother.
Oh, Lieber?
Yeah.
Stanley.
Larry.
Yeah.
I think actually had a say in Thor as well.
That's interesting.
But so he talked about how he would stop when he brought in the pages or the panels. He would stop everything and he was
present.
Yeah. And he always hand wrote the checks.
Yes.
He always made time for Sakai.
Yep.
And the thing, and I think that says a lot about him, is that when you were with Stanley, you were with Stanley. Yeah. And he always had a smile, no matter what happened. And again, we're not going to get into the details about what happened later in his life. There was a lot of crap that happened post-90s, right?
Right.
Some really bad things happened. No matter how bad things got, he always smiled. He was always optimistic about the world around him because he knew things could be better.
Right.
And it's that, like you said, it's that hope, it's that optimism that, to me, I find it very funny that he started off looking down on comics because he wanted to write the great American novel.
But he knew that it was a way to make a living.
Right.
Yeah.
But in that, I think he does something much better than because there's no great American novel, right? Because America has so many different things.
There's several, and I don't think there is one that just stands out above all the others.
But he creates Spider-Man. He creates the X-Men.
Spider-Man being kind of one of the longest, most recognizable, lasting. I mean, that one.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. He did. He wrote the great American novel, but it wasn't one story. It's hundreds of stories.
Yeah, he wrote it
over showing
decades,
decades.
For hundreds of characters, and from from kings, black kings from hidden empires to some kid from the Bronx.
Yeah,
He did write the great American novel.
He wrote an epic.
Of all of them.
It's an epic.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not just a novel. He just wrote an epic for everybody.
And even his later stuff that he tried, not as successful, but it was still good. And he took a shot. This man took a shot at DC characters. The whole, in the late 90s, early 2000s, with Stan Lee Reimagines for DC, where he went back and redid how he would have created each one of their characters. Superman,
Batman. The Batman was actually my favorite. Kubert did the artwork for that one. That was really very good.
Yeah.
And had a really interesting take. But I mean, the thing is, the man was about hope.
And
he was about.
I don't think he ever ran out of ideas. It's like he was always.
Well, he did what he loved for. I mean, very fortunate that he got to do that. So few of us actually get to do what you love for your entire life. Yeah. And I think he really did get to do what he loved for his entire life. Hence the reason I believe he kept showing up at all those conventions, even though he was failing in his health and he wasn't feeling well. It drives you. You know, when you find something you love, you're going to find a way to do it all the time, even if you're under the weather, because you go, you know what? This is my passion. This is what I live for. This is what I do. And it gives you energy. It actually makes you feel better. Yeah. You know?
At some point, his wife, again, I keep on, but his relationship with his wife was amazing. It was a very beautiful thing. I remember reading.
Very beautiful thing.
Very beautiful. I remember reading about, again.
Just the way he says it. I don't know. Like, he's very beautiful thing. It's very beautiful.
Schmucks.
Yes.
Going back to the creation of Spider-Man was that he was lamenting how kids were. He goes, I hate the language you have to use because it's kids. And she says,
talk to them like they're real.
And she says, well, then why don't you talk to them the way you want to talk to them? Treat them the way you want to be treated. And he's one of the things that sort of became obvious was he realized he wasn't talking down to kids. He talked to you. And whether he was being colloquial in Stan's soapbox or in the letters to the editor or in the stories, he understood that he was taking, most of them were teenage boys, at the time. That's who he was. That's who they were marketed.
His audience.
I was going to say he's not taking
his
teenage
audience.
boys.
Yeah, no, he wasn't taking. He was talking. That's who his audience was.
Candy?
No, who wants to fall over some Tylenol?
Yeah, no, he's not Batman. So he's talking. He understood who his audience was. We'll have the conversation later.
Okay.
No, we won't because it's stupid. Can you get to? He understood his audience.
He understood his audience.
He spoke to his audience, and he didn't talk down to.
He didn't talk down to them, and the whole point was he understood that when you're coming through that period of your life, that is when you're getting to become the person you're going to become. And if you can tell them, hey, hold on to hope a little bit longer. Don't be a jerk to people.
Don't stop believing.
Don't stop believing.
Thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah, everything's going to be okay.
Interesting, because you took it a different route.
Yeah.
Nice. Well played, sir.
Thank you.
Well played.
And I think ultimately, I think that for me, that's Stan Lee's legacy, is someone who's willing to say, hey, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but you can hold out, and you can do better, and you can be your best self. And if everyone could hold on to that message and be their best selves, the world would be in a much better place.
Ultimately, yeah, I think you're right.
That's the hope. And as we come to this, very few people have that legacy that they leave. Like he's going to leave. We did lose Ditko this year. It was sad. We lost Stan Lee this year. It was sad. And it's just, golly. And I think someone's been putting it out there. That first Marvel movie that we're going to get, or there's no Stan Lee cameo. I'm dreading that movie.
Okay, hold on. So I actually heard there was a Reddit, I didn't hear, there was a Reddit post, and I thought it was genius. Somebody suggested on Reddit that they have Deadpool do the Stan Lee cameos on all the Marvel ones going forward. Put on a wig, put on the glasses, and make it like Stan Lee from now on, because honestly, Deadpool could get away with just about anything. He breaks down any wall. He's always the crazy ass one. And I mean, if you had Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool doing Stan Lee cameos going forward, think about that. I mean, it's a great idea. It's horrible in its own way, but not really. It still pays tribute to the man as he was.
And it's something that he would get.
It's something that he would think is freaking hilarious. And again, that's the point. That's the point. Celebrate the man's life. Don't just dwell. He was 95 years old.
He had a good life.
He had an amazing life. And, I mean, he touched people all spiritually, all over the world, right? I realized what I started to say.
Unlike
all
that,
over the world. And
Shut the hell up.
But that's the thing, right? He influenced so many people's lives worldwide, and he was so many people thought he was amazing. So, So it was just yeah. I mean, you got to celebrate that. I think you should celebrate that. So, Oh, one of us is being called away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Principal.
Prince, yeah, okay. But so, do you have any final thoughts as we
Well, I'll be
finish
honest.
up?
I tried to make those my final thoughts.
Those were your final thoughts.
Because we were planned to have a video that actually ends it saying better than we can, but
Maybe it's not going to happen.
it may not happen.
I guess we'll find out, so. Yeah, we'll see what goes on.
I say we all stop and stare at them and see how this goes.
Just stop. You want silence?
I think we should have a moment.
A moment of silence. Moment of silence to Ray's backwards T-shirt.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, it
Which,
seems.
as he walks in, he'll be temporarily invisible.
Nope.
Nope. It's
Not like that. And it doesn't matter because I don't think anyone's
Well, I
watching
just
this
see.
anyway.
I can do the whole
Invisible thing.
green
Well,
thing.
Yeah, so we are going
Be
to
a little
close
floating
with that.
head.
Yeah. I'll also say this: Stanley's one of his great quotes. I don't know where the hell I'll be in 5 years. Maybe I'll be producing movies. Maybe I'll be on a corner selling apples. I don't know, but I'm having a hell of a lot of fun. And that was Stanley. So yeah, we are going to kind of end with that. Jason, you want to actually do the regular stuff? Find us on Facebook. Blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
What about the video?
Oh,
we're gonna play the
We're gonna play the video.
We'll
We'll
do
do
video
the-
here in
okay.
just a quick second.
Yeah. So before we cut to the video, you can find us at vagabondnerds.com. You can email us at vagabondnerds@gmail.com. And, of course, you can watch us on Facebook. Just type in Vagabond Nerds, and we should pop up.
So,
Did you do Dallas on air? I didn't hear you say that.
he did Dallas.
Okay, sorry.
No, I didn't. I'm
Dallas-
sorry. We're also found at DallasOnAir.com.
Yeah, check us out there.
And, of course, the new strip is up from last week.
Comic strip.
Comic strip.
You and words are worse than me today.
Dude, I know what he was talking about.
Anyway, but of course, if you want to go and watch old episodes, you can find it there. You can find it on YouTube as well. There are links, and we have our shirts up as well, so you can go order T-shirts, and we'll see y'all next time.
See you in 2 weeks. Stay tuned. We're gonna do a quick little
quick video.
Stanley cameo,
Yeah,
and
and
then
tribute.
We'll end
Yeah.
with a little quick tribute song.
Thanks.
You know, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.